Have you ever wondered why the people you give your all to often treat your presence as if it were optional? Why the more available you are, the less you seem to be seen? This paradox has left countless women confused, questioning their worth, and wondering why love often feels like a game of distance and pursuit. Carl Jung once wrote that the unconscious shapes our relationships in ways we cannot always see. Availability, though it may look like love, often becomes the very thing that erases desire. The truth is simple yet uncomfortable. When you stop making yourself endlessly available, everything shifts. Suddenly, what was once overlooked becomes magnetic. What was once taken for granted begins to shine with value. This is not about playing games. It is about reclaiming the energy you have been pouring outward and realizing how powerfully it transforms your connections. Today, we will explore why scarcity ignites attraction, why self-respect creates magnetism, and why your silence can speak louder than your constant presence. The hidden value behind your absence. There is a paradox in human nature that often goes unnoticed until you experience it yourself. People only begin to value what they once overlooked when it is no longer easily accessible. Carl Jung explained that the unconscious mind craves symbols of rarity. We are drawn to what feels scarce because the psyche interprets scarcity as a sign of importance. When something is everywhere, when it is always available, the unconscious automatically lowers its value. But when it becomes rare, even slightly distant, the mind awakens and starts to perceive it as precious. Think about your own life. Have you ever noticed how easily people expect your yes, your time, your listening, your presence? At first, it may seem like love to always be there, to always respond, to always show up. Yet the more you do it, the less impact it seems to create. Availability, when constant, turns into background noise. It loses its magic because there is no contrast. The psyche needs rhythm, needs absence and presence, silence and words, closeness and distance. Without that rhythm, even love begins to feel dull. This is why your absence has hidden value. It breaks the pattern. It interrupts the unconscious habit that others create when they assume you will always be there. Suddenly, they are faced with a gap they did not expect. That gap is powerful because it makes them confront the truth. You are not endless. You are not a limitless source of attention. You are not an infinite supply of energy. You are a human being with boundaries. In Jungian psychology, the self, the deepest center of your being, demands balance. When you overgive, when you overoffer yourself, you lose that balance and fall into what Jung called a one-sided life. You suppress your own needs, and instead of being whole, you become a fragment serving others. But the moment you step back, even slightly, yourself begins to realign, and people around you feel that shift. They may not understand it consciously, but unconsciously they recognize it. You are no longer giving away your essence without pause. Absence does not mean rejection. It means recalibration. It tells others that you are not defined by their desires, but by your own inner rhythm. This, paradoxically, increases your value in their eyes. When you are not always there, they begin to ask themselves, "Where is she? What is she doing? Why don't I feel her presence the way I used to?" These questions stir desire, curiosity, even longing. Think of it like light. If light shines continuously without interruption, the eyes eventually grow tired. But when there is darkness and then light again, the brightness feels new, even sacred. Your presence works in the same way. When you allow space, when you are absent at times, your return carries weight. People notice you more. They feel your energy more deeply because they have tasted the silence of your absence. This is the hidden value. Absence awakens gratitude. It makes others remember what your presence actually gives them. Without absence, there is no perspective. With absence, there is reflection, appreciation, even a subtle fear of losing what was once taken for granted. Carl Jung emphasized that relationships are mirrors of the unconscious. When you stop being overly available, you not only change the way others see you, but you also change the way you see yourself. You begin to respect your own time, your own energy, your own essence. That inner respect radiates outward, and others unconsciously align with it. They value you more because you are valuing yourself. So the next time you feel guilty for not answering immediately or for not being present every single moment, remember this truth. Your absence has hidden value. It is not coldness. It is not punishment. It is the natural rhythm of human connection. It is the space that allows desire, respect, and appreciation to grow. When silence speaks louder than 1,000 words, there is a kind of power that does not need to shout, explain, or even ask. It is the power of silence. Many people believe that relationships are built only on words, on constant conversations, reassurances, explanations. Yet Jung understood something deeper. Silence is never empty. It is filled with meaning, with projections from the unconscious, with emotions that rise when nothing is spoken. When you are always available, always talking, always answering instantly, you remove the possibility for silence. You fill every gap. At first, this may seem loving, but over time it removes the mystery, the space where longing can grow. Silence is uncomfortable for many because it exposes what they would rather not face. And yet, this is where transformation begins. Think about music. A song without pauses becomes unbearable, just noise. The pause between notes is what creates beauty. In the same way, your silence gives weight to your presence. If you are always speaking, your words begin to lose impact. But when you choose silence, the moment you speak again, people listen differently. Your words suddenly carry more meaning because they are not thrown out endlessly. They are rare, intentional, deliberate. Silence also reveals truth. When you stop being constantly available and you allow space, the other person is forced to confront their own feelings. They can no longer rely on your quick response to soothe their doubts. They begin to feel the absence of your voice, and in that absence, they realize what it truly means to them. Maybe they discover how dependent they are on your presence. Maybe they discover how much they miss you. These discoveries are not born through explanation. They are born through silence. Jung believed the unconscious fills silence with its own images and emotions. This is why silence can feel so intense. It stirs imagination. The other person may start asking themselves, why is she not answering? What is she doing? Did something change? These questions can create more longing than any words you could say. Curiosity awakens, desire awakens, but silence is not only for them, it is also for you. In silence, you learn to value your own company. You discover that you do not need to chase constant dialogue to feel secure. You grow stronger, more centered, more grounded. Jung often spoke about individuation, the process of becoming whole. Silence is part of that path. It teaches you that you can be with yourself, that you are not defined by the attention of another, and this inner strength radiates outward. Silence is also a form of boundary. Without saying anything, you communicate that you are not at everyone's disposal. You are not an endless well of words and attention. You give when you choose to, not when you are demanded to. This quiet boundary is powerful. It shifts the dynamic in any relationship because suddenly the other person realizes they cannot always count on immediate access to you. They must value the moments when you do speak, when you do appear. And here is the paradox. Many fear silence, but it is silence that often makes love and attraction grow stronger. Words can convince, but silence creates longing. Constant availability may soothe temporarily, but silence awakens depth. Jung wrote that solitude is for the strong. To hold silence is to show strength. It shows that you are not afraid of being with yourself, that you are not desperate for attention, that you know your worth even when no one else is speaking. It out loud. This is why silence speaks louder than 1,000 words. It is not emptiness. It is presence in another form, a deeper, quieter form that shakes the unconscious and reveals truth. When you step back, when you allow silence to exist, everything changes. The people around you feel it. Their perception of you shifts, and within yourself, something even more important happens. You begin to feel whole. Before we continue, the Jung method can help you understand the hidden patterns of love and desire. It shows why you repeat the same cycles and how to finally break free. The link is pinned in the first comment. Why being always available kills desire. Desire is a strange and delicate force. It cannot be commanded, it cannot be bought, and it cannot be maintained through constant presence. In fact, one of the greatest illusions in relationships is the belief that if you give more of yourself, more time, more attention, more availability, the other person will desire you more. The truth is the opposite. Carl Jung understood that the psyche is drawn to mystery, to tension, to what is not fully in reach. Desire thrives on distance, not on constant closeness. When you are always available, you remove that tension. You remove the possibility for longing. Imagine a fire. If it is overfed with too much fuel all at once, it smothers and goes out. But if it is given space to breathe, if it receives oxygen, it grows stronger and burns brighter. Desire functions in the same way. Too much presence suffocates it. A balance of closeness and space makes it thrive. Why does this happen? Because the unconscious mind equates availability with safety, but not with passion. What is safe, predictable, and guaranteed rarely excites the deeper instincts of attraction. Instead, it becomes background noise, something the mind assumes will always be there. Jung described the human psyche as constantly seeking wholeness through opposites, light and dark, masculine and feminine, closeness and separation. If one side dominates completely, energy fades. This is what happens when you are always available. Closeness without distance leads to numbness. You may notice this in subtle ways. The person you give all your time to may begin to respond with less energy. They may stop noticing your efforts. They may even grow irritated, though you are only trying to love them. This is not because you are unworthy. It is because desire cannot live in a space with no mystery, no anticipation, no uncertainty. Constant availability creates an unconscious certainty that kills the spark. Think of desire like a story. Every good story has suspense, waiting, the unknown. If everything were revealed at once, the story would end in a single page. Relationships are stories too. They need moments of not knowing, of waiting, of anticipation. When you make yourself endlessly available, you shorten the story. The other person feels there is nothing left to discover, no reason to lean forward, no reason to wonder what comes next. This is not about manipulation. It is not about withholding affection to create artificial scarcity. It is about recognizing that you are not meant to be a constant supply of validation. You are a whole person, with your own rhythm, your own needs, your own inner world. By honoring that, you naturally create space. That space is what allows desire to breathe. Jung often spoke of the anima and animus, the inner feminine and inner masculine energies that live inside every person. Attraction between people is partly a projection of these inner images. But projection weakens when something becomes too familiar, too easy, too constant. The psyche pulls back, looking for something more alive. When you step away from constant availability, you allow the projection to remain alive. You allow the mystery of who you are to stay intact. Ask yourself, when has someone ever truly missed you? It was not when you were always present, always saying yes. always available. It was when you pulled back, when you were absent, when you were no longer within easy reach. That is when longing rises. That is when someone realizes your worth. That is when desire comes alive. This truth can feel uncomfortable, especially if you have been taught that love means always giving, but constant giving can become suffocating. True love requires space. True desire requires mystery. Jung reminded us that individuation, becoming whole, means honoring both sides, presence and absence. Without one, the other loses meaning. So if you wonder why someone seems less interested the more you give, remember this. It is not your lack of worth. It is the nature of desire itself. Desire needs oxygen, it needs space, it needs the contrast of closeness and distance. By stepping back, by not always being available, you do not lose love. You make love visible again, the invisible power of feminine mystery. There is something about mystery that has always captivated the human soul. We are drawn to what we cannot fully explain, to what we cannot completely hold. Carl Jung explained that the psyche responds deeply to symbols, and mystery itself is one of the most powerful symbols. It represents what is hidden, what is not, yet revealed, and this awakens fascination. In relationships, the invisible power of feminine mystery is what often keeps desire alive. When you are always available, when every part of you is exposed without pause, the sense of mystery fades. The other person feels as if they already know everything, as if there is nothing more to discover. And when there is nothing left to discover, curiosity dies. But when you allow parts of yourself to remain unspoken, when you choose not to reveal everything, you awaken a different kind of attention. People begin to wonder, to imagine, to lean in closer. Mystery is not about hiding who you are. It is about holding your essence with reverence. It is about showing that your soul is not something anyone can consume at will. Jung believed that the unconscious longs for the unknown, because the unknown holds the promise of wholeness. Mystery represents the parts of life we cannot control. That is why it awakens desire. Think about the night sky. Its beauty is not in what we can clearly see, but in the endless depth of stars we cannot fully count. The same is true of a woman's presence. When you leave space, when you are not constantly explaining or proving yourself, you embody that depth. Others sense there is more to you than meets the eye, and that invisible sense of more is magnetic. The feminine mystery is also about energy. When you are fully available, constantly giving your energy outward, you drain yourself. But when you hold back some of that energy, when you protect it, people feel its intensity more strongly. It becomes concentrated, like perfume noticed most when it lingers rather than when it floods the room. Jung saw the anima, the feminine image within the psyche, as something elusive and mysterious. That is why men often fall not for what they completely understand, but for what they sense without fully grasping. Feminine mystery touches this archetype. It awakens projection, longing, and curiosity that cannot be satisfied instantly. And this is not manipulation. It is simply the natural rhythm of attraction. Mystery also teaches respect. When you do not reveal everything, you show that your essence is sacred. You communicate without words that to know you deeply is a privilege, not a guarantee. And people respect what they must earn. They may not say it out loud, but unconsciously they feel it. The psyche responds with more caution, more admiration, more care. You may have noticed how quickly interest can fade when everything is given away too soon. This does not happen because you are lacking. It happens because mystery is part of human psychology. Without it, the unconscious assumes it already possesses what it sees. With it, the unconscious feels there is always something worth seeking, something worth protecting. The invisible power of feminine mystery is also a mirror for your own growth. It reminds you that you do not have to explain every feeling. You do not have to justify every decision. You do not have to give every part of yourself away to be loved. You can keep certain parts private, sacred, and still be deeply valued. In fact, you will be valued more because you are showing that your inner world has depth. Jung believed that the self is both revealed and hidden. The path to wholeness is not about exposing everything at once, but about living in a rhythm of revelation and concealment. When you embody that rhythm in your relationships, you align with one of the deepest truths of human desire. Mystery does not separate you from love. It makes love possible. It creates space for longing, for respect, for the unconscious to dream. And in that dream, you become unforgettable. How setting limits awakens respect and attraction. One of the most misunderstood truths in relationships is that love without boundaries is not love. It is dependency. Many people confuse constant availability with care, but in reality, when you have no limits, you teach others to disregard your value. Carl Jung taught that the unconscious respects what it cannot control, and boundaries are the natural way of showing that you cannot be possessed without choice. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors. They define where you end and where the other begins. They communicate silently. This is who I am, and this is what I allow into my space. When you set limits, you are not pushing people away. You are inviting them to meet you in a healthier, deeper way. You are teaching them that your time, your energy, and your attention are precious, not infinite. Why do limits awaken respect? Because without them, there is no contrast. If you always say yes, your yes loses meaning. If you are always present, your presence is taken for granted. But when you choose carefully, when you decide when to give and when to hold back, every gesture becomes intentional. Others feel it. They sense the weight of your yes because they know you are also capable of saying no. Jung often described the danger of living a one-sided life, when one aspect dominates and balance is lost. Being endlessly available is a one-sided pattern. It drains you and devalues your presence. Boundaries restore balance. They bring back the rhythm of give and take, closeness and distance, words and silence. And in this rhythm, respect naturally grows. Attraction also rises in the presence of limits. Why? Because boundaries create space for desire. They send the unconscious a message. You cannot have me whenever you want. You must value me, choose me, and approach me with care. This scarcity awakens a primal response. Just as we treasure rare things, we treasure people who show self-respect. When you respect yourself enough to set limits, others feel that energy and are drawn to it. Think about how people treat what is fragile, rare, or sacred. They handle it with more care. They slow down. They give it more attention. Your boundaries send the same signal, handle me with care. And this does not push love away. It deepens love because it demands authenticity. Without boundaries, relationships quickly fall into imbalance. One person gives endlessly while the other unconsciously takes. The giver feels drained, unseen, and unappreciated. The taker feels entitled, not out of malice, but because no limits were ever shown. Attraction fades, resentment grows, and both feel empty. But when boundaries are present, the opposite happens. There is respect, there is curiosity, and there is space for longing. Setting limits also strengthens your inner self. Each time you say no to something that disrespects your energy, you are saying yes to your worth. Jung believed individuation, becoming whole, requires honoring both. Light and shadow, boundaries are part of this. They honor your light by protecting your energy, and they honor your shadow by acknowledging that you have limits, that you cannot give endlessly. This is why boundaries are not selfish. They are essential. They teach others how to love you in a way that does not consume you. They remind people that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. And privileges are treated with gratitude. When you stop being endlessly available and start setting limits, people may resist at first. They may question, complain, or even test your resolve. But underneath that resistance, something deeper happens. They begin to respect you. They begin to recognize that your energy is not free to be wasted, and in that recognition, attraction often reignites. Boundaries awaken desire because they awaken admiration. They show that you are not desperate to be chosen, that you are willing to choose yourself first. That energy is magnetic. Jung once said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Boundaries are part of that privilege. They show the world that you know your worth, and in turn the world responds by valuing you more. So remember, saying no is not rejection. Taking space is not abandonment. Setting limits is not coldness. It is love directed inward, and it is what makes outward love sustainable. It awakens respect, it renews attraction, and it transforms relationships from dependency into something sacred. What changes when you choose yourself first? There comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that giving endlessly does not guarantee love. She sees that being constantly available has only drained her energy, while those around her have grown used to taking without gratitude. In that moment, something powerful begins to shift. She understands that the true transformation begins, not when she chooses others first, but when she finally chooses herself. Carl Jung explained that the unconscious mind carries deep patterns that shape our behavior without us even noticing. Many women have been conditioned to believe that self-sacrifice is the highest form of love. They give, they adjust, they say yes when they want to say no, believing this will keep relationships alive. But the psyche suffers in silence. Jung called this living out of balance, when one side of the self is neglected in favor of another. And when you neglect yourself, no relationship can truly thrive. Choosing yourself first does not mean rejecting others. It does not mean becoming selfish or cold. It means remembering that your life, your time, and your energy are sacred. It means honoring your needs with the same respect you have given to everyone else. And when you do this, something remarkable happens. You stop living from emptiness, and you start radiating from fullness. Imagine pouring water from a cup that is always empty. No matter how much you try, nothing comes out. This is what happens when you always put others above yourself. You run dry. But when you fill your own cup first, through rest, through silence, through self-care, through protecting your energy, you begin to give from overflow, not from lack. People feel the difference. Your presence becomes richer, warmer, and more magnetic because it is no longer forced. Jung often said that wholeness comes from integrating the neglected parts of ourselves. For many, this neglected part is the self itself. We are so busy proving our worth to others that we forget to value our own worth. But when you choose yourself, you bring this forgotten part back into balance. You begin to live not as a shadow of someone else's needs, but as the full expression of your own soul. And here is the paradox. When you choose yourself first, others often choose you more. Why? Because they sense your self-respect. They feel that you are not desperate for validation. They realize that your attention is a gift, not an entitlement. This changes the entire dynamic. Instead of chasing after those who take you for granted, you become the one they seek. Instead of begging for love, you embody love by giving it to yourself first. Choosing yourself also breaks unhealthy cycles. Many people unconsciously test how much they can take from someone. If you never draw the line, they keep taking, not because they are cruel, but because no limit was ever shown. When you choose yourself, you naturally set those limits. You teach others how to treat you. You show them that you will not abandon yourself for their comfort. There is also a spiritual dimension here. Jung believed the self is the image of God. Within each person, the deepest, most divine center of the psyche. When you ignore yourself, you ignore that sacred image. But when you choose yourself, you align with that divine spark. You begin to live as someone who knows her worth, not because others affirm it, but because it flows from within. This inner choice creates outer changes. Relationships shift. Some people may fall away because they were only drawn to the version of you who overgave. Others will step closer with more respect and admiration because they see your strength. And most importantly, you will feel different. You will feel grounded, calm, and less afraid of being alone. You will know that your value is not dependent on anyone else's approval. Jung reminded us that individuation, the journey of becoming whole, often requires painful but necessary steps. Choosing yourself is one of those steps. It may feel uncomfortable at first, but it leads to freedom. It allows you to live as a full person, not as an echo of what others want you to be. So what changes when you choose yourself first? Everything. The way people treat you changes. The way you feel inside changes. The way desire flows in your relationships changes. You move from a life of depletion to a life of fullness. And in that fullness, you discover a truth that cannot be taken away. When you choose yourself, you do not lose love. You invite the kind of love that honors who you truly are. The difference between authentic presence and forced presence. There is a presence that feels alive, magnetic, unforgettable, and there is another kind of presence that feels heavy, empty, and unnoticed. The difference between the two is simple, but profound. One is authentic, the other is forced. Carl Jung taught that the unconscious can sense truth even when the conscious mind ignores it. People may not always know why they feel drawn to you or why they feel distant, but they will feel the difference between your true presence and the mask of availability you put on when you are afraid of losing someone. Forced presence is what happens when you show up out of fear. Fear of being abandoned, fear of being forgotten, fear that if you do not give enough, the relationship will fade. You may answer texts instantly even when you are exhausted. You may agree to meet when you desperately need rest. You may laugh at things that hurt you just to keep the peace. Outwardly, it looks like presence, but inwardly it is absence, because you are not really there. You are acting a role, silencing your own truth. Authentic presence, on the other hand, comes from wholeness. It is when you show up because you genuinely want to, not because you are afraid not to. It is when your yes is real, your laughter is real, your attention is real. This kind of presence radiates energy. It makes people feel alive around you because they can sense you are giving from truth, not from fear. Jung explained that authenticity carries archetypal power. When we live in alignment with our real self, others feel it unconsciously. They may not have words for it, but they know it. Why is this difference so important? Because relationships are not sustained by quantity of presence, but by quality of presence. You could spend endless hours with someone and leave them feeling empty if your presence is forced. But a single moment of authentic presence can be unforgettable because it is charged with your real energy. When you are always available, you risk slipping into forced presence. You give and give, even when you are drained. Over time, this erodes not only your energy, but also the respect of others. They sense the heaviness behind your presence, even if they cannot explain it. They may even begin to feel guilty or irritated, because your presence is no longer a gift, it is an obligation. Authentic presence requires boundaries. It requires saying no when you need to, so that your yes has meaning. It requires choosing moments of solitude, so that when you return, you bring freshness and vitality. It requires honesty with yourself, asking, am I showing up because I truly want to, or because I am afraid of losing love? Jung believed that wholeness is only possible when we integrate our shadow, the parts of ourselves we usually deny. Forced presence comes from denying the shadow. It denies your fatigue, your frustration, your need for space. Authentic presence accepts those truths. It allows you to rest, to withdraw, to care for yourself. Then when you do show up, you bring your whole self, not a fragmented mask. This is why people are drawn to authentic presence. It feels rare, it feels safe, it feels real. It awakens desire and respect because it is not desperate. It communicates, I'm here because I choose to be, not because I fear being forgotten. And that choice makes all the difference. Think of the people you remember most in your life. They are not the ones who forced themselves into every moment. They are the ones whose presence felt alive, whose words felt real, whose energy carried weight. That is the legacy of authenticity. It does not need to be constant to be powerful. When you stop being endlessly available and start honoring your truth, you step out of forced presence. At first, it may feel risky. You may worry, what if they leave if I am not always there? But soon you will see the opposite. The more authentic your presence becomes, the more others value it. The unconscious always seeks truth, and when it finds it, it clings to it. Jung once said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Authentic presence is that privilege in action. It is the choice to show up as yourself, not as a shadow of fear. And when you make this choice, everything changes, not only in how others see you, but in how you see yourself, the exact moment when everything truly shifts. There is a turning point in every story, a moment where the direction changes and nothing remains the same. In relationships, that moment often comes the day you decide to stop being endlessly available. It may sound simple, almost too small to matter, but it carries the weight of transformation. Because in that moment, you stop living from fear and start living from strength. You stop begging for recognition and start embodying your own worth. Carl Jung explained that the unconscious responds not to what we say, but to the energy behind our choices. When you are always available, the energy you send out is one of self-abandonment. It says, my needs do not matter as long as I keep you close. But when you step back, when you allow absence, silence, and limits, the energy changes. Suddenly, the unconscious of the other person feels something different. She is not mine to take for granted. She values herself. If I want to be close to her, I must also value her. That is the moment where respect begins. That is the moment where attraction rekindles. The shift is not just external, it happens within you first. For so long, you may have been living as though your worth depended on others, their calls, their attention, their presence. But the day you stop chasing and start choosing yourself, a new story begins. You realize that love given to yourself is not selfish, it is the foundation of every other kind of love. And from that foundation, you stop fearing loss. You stop fearing silence. You stop fearing absence. Because you know that your life has meaning whether or not anyone else sees. This is the deepest transformation, when you no longer seek to be chosen, because you have already chosen yourself. Jung believed individuation, the journey to wholeness, is marked by these turning points. They are often painful, but they lead to freedom. By stepping out of constant availability, you step into authenticity. You align with the self, that inner core Jung described as the image of the divine within. The moment everything shifts is also the moment you see relationships differently. You no longer confuse presence with proof of love. You no longer measure your worth by how quickly someone responds. Instead, you begin to see that true connection is built not on constant availability, but on mutual respect, mystery, and balance. You see that love without boundaries is not love at all, but dependency, and you refuse to live in dependency anymore. Others notice this change. Some may resist it because they were used to the version of you who gave without limits. But those who truly value you will adjust, will grow, will meet you at this new level. And those who do not will fall away, which is also a gift, because it leaves space for something truer to enter. Think of it this way. The sun does not beg the earth to notice it. It shines in its own rhythm, with its own strength. And everything else naturally responds to its presence. That is what happens when you choose to stop being endlessly available. You begin to shine from within, without begging to be seen. And in that shining, everything changes. Jung once said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Terrifying because it requires courage, but liberating because it sets you free. When you accept yourself enough to stop giving your energy away without pause, you embody that truth. And from that moment on, your life and your relationships are never the same. So the exact moment when everything truly shifts is not when someone else changes. It is when you do. It is when you decide. My presence is a gift. My time is valuable. My energy is sacred. I will not abandon myself to be loved by others. That is the choice that awakens respect, desire, and admiration. That is the choice that transforms everything. If this message touched you, remember, the journey of self-worth and transformation does not end here. Every step you take toward valuing yourself first is a step toward a life of deeper love, stronger presence, and authentic freedom. Follow this channel, stay close, and be part of this path. More videos are coming, each one crafted with care, depth, and emotional truth to help you see yourself with new eyes. Don't miss what's next. Your transformation is only beginning.